December the 19th, 2024, for the AIB regular scheduled meeting. I'm going to delay my remarks till later on in the program for today in the agenda. Once we've had an opportunity to, in effect, look at a few of the items therein. We have a rather full agenda. We will have an executive session or closed session a little bit later on. The first thing I want to do is the adoption of last meeting's minutes summary. If everyone had an opportunity to look at those meeting summaries, please indicate by raising your hand. And if you have any questions there too, or changes, I would entertain those at this point in time. Okay, hearing or seeing none. At this point in time, I'd like to have a motion to approve the summary of the meeting summary from last meeting summary.
Also moved.
The second.
I'll second.
The moved and properly second that we approve the summary of the last meeting summary. Ready for the question? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. Are there any revisions to the agenda for today? First of all, we'll have public comments. The third item will be the blueprint implementation plan review status and feedback. A presentation on teacher shortage pipeline. A discussion of the blueprint implementation progress and challenges. State implementation plans update. Our executive summary, and then we will adjourn into closed session. All right. Any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll now go to our public comments. I'm not sure who's in the waiting room at this point in time. All these written, I see several that are written. Do we have anyone in the waiting room at this point in time? Madam Executive Director.
So we do have one person who signed up for a verbal comment, Mr. Joseph Cormier. Hopefully I said that correctly. Do we have him? Oh, I see. Joe. You can come off mute, and if you want to turn your camera on and go ahead and make your comments.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Joseph Cormier, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. Just want to thank the board for their time today. As we continue to hear rumblings from the governor and the state legislature regarding cuts to the blueprint or the timeline adjustments for the blueprint due to budget shortages, I'd like to talk about the importance of implementing the blueprint with fidelity and finding proper funding. Before we start talking about adjustments to the pillars of the blueprint, let's first discuss adjustments to the wealth formula used by the Department of Legislative Services and the Office of Budget Management using data from the State Department of Taxation and Assessments. Currently, that formula does not take pilot payments or payment in lieu of taxes offered by local governments, only the reported taxable assessments. For example, Calvert County, by some accounts, is the 17th wealthiest county in the nation, and they hide a multi-billion-dollar liquefied natural gas plant and nuclear power facility behind the pilots. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with the pilot. It's a COMAR-regulated financial tool for counties and private capital to ease the year-to-year swing in taxable assessments and allow them to enter into a contract to lock in an agreed rate. However, for whatever reason, the current wealth formula pretends that anything in a pilot isn't contributing to the tax base. When the pilot and for the LNG expired, SDAT reassessed the plant, which due to investments and expansion grew from $400,000 to $4 billion, with a capital B. In fact, Calvert sued SDAT and claiming it was actually worth $8 billion based upon its sale from Dominion to Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. No longer in a pilot, the LNG paid upwards of $58 million in taxes last year, which should have been $100 million because the BOCC gave them a decade-long 42% tax credit, but that's a story for another day. With the increase in assessed value, the state recognized the actual wealth in Calvert and cut $22 million from the state's contribution. Calvert scrambled to reinstate their pilot, and Commissioner Hance, president of the BOCC, said the quiet part out loud, quote, "The only reason we're signing this is to get it off of the wealth evaluation," unquote. So why can't the state recognize that as part of the wealth funding? So instead of Howard and Cecil in Baltimore City paying for Calvert students when Calvert has wealth, and on top of that, Calvert's getting $60 million for the next 20 years from this LNG plant. Why shouldn't that be recognized as part of the wealth calculation? The state should use the actual assessed value, because pilots and tax credits are a choice by local counties and governments. And if they choose to get a lower amount from private capital, they should have to make up the difference, not the state. When local governments can have cigar hours and happy hours at their golf courses and pickleball tournaments, they should not come back and cry when they have to spend 42% of their budget on education. We need to use the blueprint to realign priorities across the state and not let local governments make big decisions that affect the entire state. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate everything you do, and continue the good work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cormier. We have written testimony from a number of people. Would you list those names off, or anyone else here in person for direct testimony? Mrs. Heiss.
Muted. Sorry, I'm muted. Can we just confirm that no one else is here to provide verbal comment?
Confirmed.
Okay, great. So then we do have a written testimony that we received from Christina Sipe, Alita Jerry Carter, Yilmaz Ak, and Sandy Abu Arja. All of those documents have been provided to the board members and also posted for the public.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, this is closed agenda item number 2, public comments. We'll now go to agenda item number 3, which is the LEA Blueprint Implementation Plan Review Status and Feedback. Madam Executive Director.
Yes, thank you so much. So if we could share the slide deck. At this point, I think it is fairly familiar, the information that we're going through for many folks around the status and the components of the implementation plans. If we go to, you can see here on slide 3 that we have color-coded the components. So the items that are green font are items where all 24 LEAs have met the criteria for success and been recommended for approval in those areas. There are 2 components where we have actually 7 LEAs that up to now that were not ready to be recommended for approval. And that is in the career ladder, which includes the first maintenance of national board certification, and then in the area of the career counseling and submitting a revised agreed upon MOU by all the parties. Next slide. In terms of career ladders, prior to today, the board has, staff has recommended, the board has taken action on career ladder recommendations for 20 of the 24 LEAs. And there were 4 LEAs that had not actually, at the last board meeting, there were 2 LEAs that actually had not submitted the required items, and 2 others that were not ready for, staff was not ready to make a recommendation of approval. Since then, we did receive the documentation for the full career ladder from Baltimore City, and Montgomery County has submitted their first maintenance of certification. So we've received those documents, and we've also received revised submissions from Talbot County and responses to requests for information from Anne Arundel County. So at this time, the staff following the process we've been using for all of the LEAs and reviewing the submitted career ladders against the criteria for success. We are recommending 2 additional plans for approval, and that would be Baltimore City and Talbot County. And then there are also 2 LEAs that we are recommending conditional approval. So the submission meets the substantive requirements, but the final signed documents are not available yet. And so we are recommending conditional approval for Anne Arundel for their full plan and Montgomery County for their first maintenance of certification. Happy to respond to questions or go over the feedback for any of the LEAs if you would like to.
Yeah, let's go back again and make sure we got them all. We're gonna consider these in separate order, those who are approved and those who are conditionally approved. So I want 2 motions that will affect that. So let's make sure we got those in order and we put those in 2 separate motions.
Yes, and we do have 2 motions for at the end of this item that include approval for. We're also going to talk about career counseling, and so we have motions that combine the career counseling and the career ladder for the plan approvals. I do see a couple of board member hands.
Why don't you
Member Manco?
Yeah, just a question around the career ladder status, in particular for Anne Arundel County, because I know there were some concerns surfaced by a litany of Anne Arundel County teachers that had achieved national board certification, and the statements in the multiple letters that were written is they felt like they were not getting the full salary supplement that's provided through the national board, through their achieving in the national board certification, and wanted to get a sense of where those conversations landed with the both the leadership at Anne Arundel County, and then also discussions with the union leadership at Anne Arundel County, and how that all got sorted out, and is leading to a recommendation for approval of their career ladder status, despite having, some controversy around what's happening with the national board certified teachers in that county.
Right. So if it would be helpful, we could share everyone has access to the feedback document that staff has prepared with the recommendation of conditional approval for all 4 of these career ladders. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of those documents. In terms of, and within those documents, we have links to the submissions, which includes the request for additional information that AIB staff requested. And so in terms of Mr. Manco, your question regarding some of the concerns, we did ask Anne Arundel to provide more information and assurance that no teacher would earn less once they join the career ladder compared to what they were earning on the traditional salary scale. And they did provide they did say that was correct, that no one would earn less than they would on the traditional scale. And they also provided some examples of that. Now, as we dug a little, they also provided examples, and I want to be very clear, that no one would earn less once they earn national board certification. So on level 3 and above on their career ladder. They actually did note that at level 1 and 2, there's the possibility that someone might earn less. if they opt in to the career ladder before they earn national board certification. And so part of the feedback that we provided is that it was, really the district and the union really needed to make sure that they were providing information to teachers so that they could make informed decision around the timing of if they want to opt into the career ladder, the timing of that so that they, were aware that if they opt in prior to earning national board, they potentially would earn less. It's not a significant amount less. It's a couple $100 each year, but that does add up. In terms of, they also provided examples to show that teachers will be getting the salary supplement once they earn national board, the 10,000, and then potentially 7,000 if they're teaching in a low performing school. And that, each year, if you compare what they're earning on the career ladder and what they would have earned on the traditional scale, it is more. Over time.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, and this may be a question both for you and for Ms. Dutterer, but what's laid out in the legislation is the expectation that national board certified teachers will earn more than those who have not been board certified, or that amount has to be the $10,000 that is written into the legislation.
I'm not sure that assessment is correct. You'd earn $10,000
Sure.
additional. Whether or not you would earn always as much as someone not on the same career ladder with the National Board Certified depends on a number of factors. So it doesn't guarantee that you would always earn that. Keep in mind that this was negotiated with their union. And we have indicated very clearly that all of the career ladders are not necessarily, there's no requirement that they all be the same. There are some caveats and some things that we want as a foundation for all of them, but they're not necessarily are going to be the same. Mm-hmm. And there are complaints about it, but I think the initial complaint should be with the teachers union who negotiated this. And also keep in mind that this is not negotiated in perpetuity. The unions and the superintendent and the board are back at this at the end of this recently negotiated contract. And that may be, I'm not sure what the number of years. So not required that they all be the same. It's not required that they all make more money. That could be the assumption is that it would, but it's not guaranteed that it will in every situation, because it depends on the fact that you may have a teacher who is fairly well educated in terms of additional degrees and certification and have additional more years. But at some point, that particular teacher may earn more than a national board certified teacher. Mm-hmm. Or guaranteed to have the $10,000, and you should earn more, but it's not necessarily you can guarantee that every point in time that they would earn more than some of the others.
Sure.
Executive Director Heiss?
Yes.
Yeah. Just to clarify this point, if someone is national board certified, they'll be on the career ladder, and when they become national board certified, they would earn $10,000, at least $10,000 more than they were earning before becoming national board certified. Is that
yes
correct?
Yes, at that point in time.
Okay, so they would get they would get the $10,000.
Yes.
And no matter from that point on, no matter where they are on the career ladder, they're earning more than they would have if they weren't on the career ladder. If they weren't national.
Yes, correct. Yes, correct.
So I think what you're saying is that this contract meets the technical requirements of the blueprint. However, it's less generous than the other career ladder contracts we have approved. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, I think that is. Thank you. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you. Member Manko sort of asked the general question that I was going to ask. But I guess I do have a follow-up. So, he mentioned that we've received a lot of communication from various teachers, National Board Certified teachers in that county. So just to kind of synthesize it down, like the breakdown, and there's a breakdown in how it's being perceived, which is that while they are receiving more money than the other teachers in the county who are not National Board Certified, they're not receiving as much as in any other districts in the county, in the state of Maryland. Most districts are just giving a blanket amount that's more. Is that accurate?
Sort of. I think where the concern is, I think what has caused it is that up to now, when the career ladder was negotiated, teachers with national board certification are on the traditional scale because that's the only thing that existed, and they are receiving, per the state law, the additional $10,000 for being national board certified and $7,000 if they are not. Now that a career ladder has been negotiated, Anne Arundel, and what they negotiated is that first, that teachers that are national board certified automatically move to the career ladder, and that the negotiation is that the salary scale is different than the traditional scale. So the career ladder provides for smaller annual increases separate from the national board salary supplement on the career ladder than on the traditional scale. So compared to what they've received the past 2 years, it will be less.
Have other
Because of what was negotiated.
Have other districts taken a similar approach to that, or generally?
No.
Okay, so that's an anomaly across the state.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Well, what that obviously may do, though, clearly they are correct in what they're doing, in my opinion, but it exposes them and some teachers to being tapped for maybe leaving that county, depending on how they stand in Anne Arundel County. So that's a risk that they're taking if someone thinks it's more lucrative and a better opportunity somewhere else based on negotiated the career ladder and the national board certification, 10,000 payment. That's an obvious quirk in what they're doing, but they've taken that chance. They negotiated. They had the right to do so, and they are technically within the parameters of the legislation.
I agree, and I guess that's kind of how I was thinking about it. I'm just wondering, and I guess I would hope that people are kind of looking at the spirit of the law and trying to make this a desirable profession and make sure that we're rewarding educators fairly. And I do want to thank the majority of the vast majority of the LEAs across the state who have taken that approach. I apologize for the announcements. I'm in a school. We
actually couldn't hear them.
Oh, as soon as they came on, I hit the the little mute button. Yeah, so I'm grateful as an educator to the other districts across the state who have I guess sort of made the choice to reward the educators who have chosen to pursue this path. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, obviously that does open them up to the chance that some people might choose to go elsewhere. Like I know there are districts who've gone above the statutory 10,000 and above the statutory 7,000 to make sure that, especially when you live in one of the more urban areas of the state, with the higher cost of living, that you're making sure you're being competitive. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record.
Thank you. Anything else on this?
Yes, Member Stapleton?
Executive Director Hines, I'm sorry. My hand is raised, but you may not be able to see it because it
I
blinked.
apologize. I could not
No,
see
no,
it.
no. I had to change color. But anyway, I'm sorry. I just had a question of clarifying question. So when a teacher, and this is for Anne Arundel, achieves national board certification, gets on the career ladder, do you know if that impacts compensation for earning additional education credits, such as master's plus 30? Oftentimes, teachers will be compensated for earning that, or for earning a doctorate, they're compensated. Do you know if on that career ladder it had any impact on that?
My understanding, and Libby Diamond is our policy analyst who has delved deeper into the details. So please, Libby, chime in if I go astray. But my understanding is that the way that they will, once a teacher earns national board and moves to the career ladder, wherever they are on the traditional scale, so if they have a master's plus, if they're at master's plus 30 or PhD or wherever, they will move on to the career ladder at that exact place and receive the additional salary supplement for national board certification. From that point on, they will not be on the traditional scale anymore. So they would receive a different increase each year than if they had stayed on the traditional scale, but their spot on the traditional scale will be maintained when they move to the career ladder. So they would receive the compensation that they already hold for that. If what I don't know, and I'm not sure Libby will know this either, but if they were to earn something after they move to the career ladder, I think we would maybe have to follow up on that, unless Libby, you know the answer.
I'm looking back now and I don't know the answer to that right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I think that was my question. If they're on the career ladder and then they earn the master's plus 30 or whatever, are they compensated for that on this career ladder as opposed to the traditional career ladder? And thank you for obliging me on that.
Thank you.
Of course. We'll see. We'll follow up on that question. Member Stapleton.
Yep, I just had one question for clarification. I just want to make sure I heard correctly. I think you said if a teacher in Anne Arundel achieves national board certification, they are then required to move to the career ladder?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No, they're required if they want to get the $10,000.
Correct. That is correct. Yes, that is more accurate. Okay, I'm just double checking. I'm using my other thing so I can see everyone's hand. I don't see any other hands raised at the moment. Are we ready to move on to career counseling?
I think so. Unless there are other questions, we can move on to the next item.
Just to finish up on the career ladder, we did just want to share that we do have, as part of the career ladder submissions, we have 4 LEAs that are currently piloting in some way level 4 of the career ladder. And we just wanted to note that. And those are in Anne Arundel, 3. counties that are piloting level 4, Anne Arundel, Kent, and Prince George's counties. And as part of our monitoring of the implementation of the career ladder, we have indicated, and we are going to go back and ask those LEAs to share sort of what the implementation has looked like, and whatever information they can share with us on what they're learning from their pilots, and how it's affecting their design of level 4 for particularly for Kent and Prince George's County as for their next submission. And then also we have been working with MSTE to develop draft criteria for success for the 2025 career ladder submissions. We have draft has been shared with the LEAs and also teachers union representatives to provide feedback. And we have received that feedback earlier this month, and we are in the process of processing all of that information and developing a revised draft to again share out to get additional feedback before we bring it to the board for approval.
Okay.
If we can move on to career counseling. So we have 2 additional career counseling MOUs to recommend for approval. And with this, that allows full approval of the career LEA implementation plans, the entire plans for Howard County and Prince George's County. In the case of Howard County, we did just receive last night or this morning their signed MOU by all of the parties. So that is recommended for approval. Prince George's County, we have their MOU, but it is not signed. And so that would be conditional approval pending receipt of a signed document.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions about either Howard or Prince George's County and their MOU, we're happy to discuss that.
All right. Seeing or hearing none, let's move on.
Hi. So actually, I think we can skip this for now. Go to the next slide. So in summary, then we have 6 plans that are LEA plans with all of the components that have now been recommended for approval or conditional approval that we're bringing to the board for your approval today. You can see that 3 of the counties have conditional approval pending receipt of those signed documents, Anne Arundel, Montgomery, and Prince George's. The other 3, Baltimore City, Howard, and Talbot, are recommended for full approval because we have their signed documents. We do have 2 motions that have been prepared, one for the full approval and one for conditional approval.
Why don't you read the motion for me, please?
Sure. Give me a moment. So for the full plan approvals, the motion reads, after careful consideration of the recommendations of the AIB staff and MSDE, and based on the board's own independent review of all documents provided by the LEAs, the motion is for the board to approve the 2024 blueprint implementation plans submitted by the following LEAs and to authorize release of the fiscal year 2025 blueprint funds that are automatically withheld by law. And to clarify that the board's approval extends only to the elements of career ladders that are set forth in a fully executed agreement between the LEA and the local education association. And
okay.
the 3 LEAs again are Baltimore City, Howard County, and Talbot County.
Okay. I so move. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Been moved and properly second that we approve the so mentioned counties. Are there any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, ready for the question? All in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to the motion? Abstentions? Hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion is so approved. The second motion.
The second motion is for the conditional approvals. After careful consideration of the recommendations of AIB staff and MSDE, and based on the board's own independent review of all documents provided by the following LEAs, the motion is for the board to find that all criteria have been met except for receipt of certain fully executed agreements, and that these fully executed agreements are necessary for final approval. Therefore, to approve the following plans on the condition that these fully executed agreements are received by the AIB, and to clarify that the board's approval extends only to the elements of the LEA career ladders that are set forth in a fully executed agreement between the LEA and the local education association. And this conditional approval is for Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County, and Prince George's County. For Anne Arundel and Montgomery, it is pending receipt of the signed and executed career ladder documents. For Prince George's County, it is pending receipt of signed career counseling MOU.
Okay. And the motion, I so move.
Second.
Moved and properly second. Are any discussions on the motion for conditional approval for the so mentioned counties?
I just saw Member Stapleton. Did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, yep, but I did it after we approved the motion going forward for discussion. I wanted to know if we need to put a date in here by which we would receive the fully executed agreement. I don't know if we want to have conditional approval in perpetuity.
I'm not sure. That's our attorney. See what she says. Since we can execute the withholding of the funds, I'm not sure that we necessarily need to do so, because I believe we could do it at any point in time rather than to be bound by a particular date. We can do this, so withhold the funds, make a determination at any point in time. Is that correct, Madam Attorney?
It's up to the board's discretion. I would just note, and Rachel, please correct me if I'm wrong, that if the board wanted to make a decision to not release or withhold funds, they would need to make that decision before, is it May 1st?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
In order to comply with certain administrative procedures within the comptroller's office and MSDE.
So to follow up then.
Yeah.
Are we okay if the counties do not give us a fully executed agreement before May 1st?
So what I would say is that right now, what the timeline that is laid out, and we're going to discuss, we have one LEA that has not been recommended for approval yet. And we have indicated in previously and again today that the timeline for submitting documents to the AIB for consideration of approval at the board's January 30th meeting is January 16th. For any documents for any counties where we don't have those monies yet, or those plans yet by January 16th, which with the holidays that might be tight for some of these folks that are signing agreements. I think the board, as Heidi said, it is up to the board's discretion. So you could determine at the end of January that because you hadn't received the document that you wanted to withhold money. And as Heidi said, from a logistical perspective, the board would need to make a decision before May 1st in order for the monies to actually be withheld in fiscal year 2025.
So I guess
I had my hand up.
I see several hands, yes. I wanted to, I don't know who was first, so
I think it was member Doss.
thank you.
Thank you. I have an outstanding question on one of the LEAs that I expressed earlier. So is it possible to amend the motion so that we're approving these separately, or is there another way that we should do that?
You mean individual counties, you mean?
Yes.
Or the two categories, which separate you talking about? We are doing two separate here.
Are you referring to the 3 counties on the
The
conditional?
3 counties on the
motion?
conditional.
Yes,
Is it possible to do those separately, or is? Okay.
yes, it is.
And make a motion or amend it if you need to.
So member Doss, if you would like to consider a certain county or more than one county separately, then that would be your motion.
Okay. So then I would like to make a motion to consider Anne Arundel County career ladder separately.
Okay. All right, we'll X out. The motion is to deal with Anne Arundel County separately, and we approve the other 2. That's your motion, amendment to the motion?
That is the motion.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
A second.
Okay, it's moved and properly second that we deal with the 2, which are, give me the 2 again, Madam Executive.
Montgomery and Prince George's. And before we call that vote, there are several other hands up. So I just want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to.
Question now, this motion.
Yeah, my question is not about this motion, so
Okay.
I'm fine with moving ahead, but my hand is still up.
Okay, well, the question.
Member Lynch?
So you have to
Is it-
speak.
Yeah,
Is it
sorry.
about this motion?
I was just finding my unmute. I agree with Member Stapleton that I think that we should have some sort of a deadline by which we are offering the end of this conditional approval. And I think it should be well in advance of the May 1st deadline, because I think that we should be providing that notification and that opportunity for back and forth that I think the AIB has offered in the past, so that we aren't sort of caught up against a deadline, or LEAs aren't caught up against a deadline.
I wanted to make the same point, but that's not on this particular motion.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It started as the motion.
Yeah, right.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, it's fine. I'm glad we're aligned.
So let me ask Ms. Dunner, if we were going to adopt a deadline, would we want to put it in the motion?
So the current motion is that I believe is standing right now is just to
Separate
the 2. And we would need to then read the motion again with just the 2, the Montgomery and Prince George's County, which I assume you'll take first. And then, if you're going to do that, and I think you probably also want to have, if you're going to entertain the idea of a deadline, you'd want to have that as well. So
That's right. Okay. So
Okay.
then,
Any further discussion on the motion that is before us to X these 2 out from the 3 components? That's the motion on the floor.
Mr. Chair, I believe that based on what Ms. Dunner is advising, that we would, if we're going to adopt a deadline, that we would want to determine that now so it can be
I understand
part
that.
of the motion. Okay.
Yeah. But that would be an addendum to the motion on here. So you have to speak to the motion. So if someone wants to do that, they can amend the motion. But we have not adopted it. So if you don't want to separate them out and you don't want them at the time, you have that opportunity to do so at this point.
So we could take a vote right now just to separate.
Right.
And then we'll have another vote on whether or not you're going to put in deadline. That is fine.
That's what I'm saying. All right, anyone wants to speak to the motion for separation before we go on? Okay, if not, we have a motion on the floor that has been properly seconded that we separate Montgomery County and who was the other one?
Prince George's.
George's County. Is there any further questions on that motion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 The opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries. Are there any additional motions at this point? Or amendments?
Well,
Vice Chair Kerwin?
yeah, I want to come back to the, uh, have we voted on, we voted on the separation, right?
That's all we've done.
Yeah, okay. So I want to pick up on the point that both Member Stapleton and Member Lynch made about some kind of warning deadline to the conditional approvals for all the points they articulated so well. So I don't have a fixed date in mind, but since Director Heiss mentioned the January 30th meeting, I'm just throwing out an idea that could we say we want materials, we want the missing materials by January 16th, and if they're not received, you are at risk of having funds withheld, or something like that in our warning to them, our message to them.
We have until the 1st of May.
Yeah,
right?
that I think that's pretty late.
All right, wait, let me back up. We have the 1st of May. Why don't we back up from the 1st of May? What would be an appropriate time for us to react responsibly prior to that date? And that'd be the date. You have several months in between that. And depending on what they have to do, you want to give them an opportunity to do it. You want to do two things. You want to give them an opportunity to achieve what we want. And you also want to give us an opportunity to have sufficient time to make a decision well before May the 1st.
Right.
You have between January 30th and that period of time. And so whatever that time frame is, I think that's the date we should set.
Yeah.
The time need to respond adequately, and a time to give them sufficient time to respond to the question before us.
Basically, that's what I was hoping we could. Would March 1 be appropriate? Does that give them enough time?
Then they have 60 days. Do we have an opportunity to meet in between that? I would go with that date. March 1st is the cutoff.
I think that's too late.
Why so? We have 2 meetings in between that.
I think I want to be sure that the AIB staff has sufficient time to review and then provide feedback, and any, like, I think in general there's been back and forth between the AIB and LEAs. And so I think my recommendation would be maybe mid-February, because I think the AIB should have, at least 15 to 20 days to be able to review and provide feedback and have that back and forth.
I would go along with that, but we would have 60 days, and we're only dealing with a couple of items at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all we're dealing with. We're not dealing with a total review. We're only dealing with those items for which we find that there's a problem, a technical problem. And so the question for us, the part of that is for them to resolve their challenge. I don't think it would be a heavy lift for us if we got 60 days for us to decide that they have not done it and give them notice that funds are going to be cut off. The problem is going to be, do they have enough time to resolve their problem? And you got the holidays coming up and everything else. So that's the question I think is out there. Yeah,
I agree. I think that the January is too soon because of the holiday. Nobody's going to be back in until at least January 6th. I think that's probably too soon. I think not my concern, but my sort of thought around it is, if we have to make a decision by May 1st, I think we have to look at whatever our last AIB meeting will be before that date, because we have to make it by May 1st. So we will have had to have made, there will have to have been some sort of discussion prior to May 1st about whether or not we're going to be moving forward as of May 1st. And so then you back out from there. That's my only consideration.
And we have 2 dates that we're meeting before that, both March and in April. So we could deal with it in March or April. You have plenty of time in that. So, but if you want to go to a shorter period of time, that's okay. But I just wanted to make sure we're clear about that. So what was the suggestion, that it'd be mid-February?
Yeah, my suggestion was like a February 15th, and then that gives that would give you a full 60 days of back and forth and still 15 days before May 1st to have had conversations and discussions. You know, like, I think you need some sort of a buffer because the conversation will be different about withholding, and we need to have time to have that discussion. And so we need to have a final decision in time to have the part 2 discussion.
Okay. All right, so the motion is to amend to February the 15th, the middle of February. So let's strike it in half. Well, February is not this Monday. Okay, February 15th. We'll go with that.
Mr.
one-
Chair, are you making that motion, just for the record?
She wants to make an amendment to the motion. So let's go
Okay,
ahead.
so it's Member Lynch's motion. I'm just taking notes.
Right.
Sorry, I don't know what it is. Tell me what I'm motioning. I am motioning a thing. What is the official
motion
language?
is to amend the what will now be 2 different motions, one for Anne Arundel County and one for Montgomery County and Prince George's County together to
Include a deadline to submit all final materials by February 15th. And I would add that we will provide a final decision no later than April 15th. Like, there's no wiggling after April 15th.
Can I just offer, because the board meeting is on April 17th?
Would you like it to be sooner?
So could
Like
we,
April
or
1st?
just instead of April 15th, say
April 17th.
17th? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, there's a second to the motion.
Second.
Okay, moved and properly second that we amend the time to February the 15th with a final cutoff as to April 17th, as I recall. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll now call for the question. All in favor of the amended time for February and April, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, the ayes have it. And we go back to the main motion, which is the separation, which we've done. And we now have a separate matter to deal with, which is Anne Arundel County. Is there a question on that, Ms.? Who raised the question initially?
Member Doss, however, do we want to vote on Montgomery and Prince George's first fully?
Yes. Okay, let's go and vote on Montgomery and Prince George's County with the amended dates now of February the 15th and April 17th. The motion is now before us. I hope everybody's clear on that. All in favor of the amended motion, please indicate by, for Montgomery and Prince George's County, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none, the ayes have it. Member Doss, I think you have the floor.
Yes, I wanted to pull out Anne Arundel County because I had the question that clarifying question that I asked earlier about the career ladder. Whereas if a teacher gets the NBCT certification and gets on the career ladder, and then subsequently wants to earn a master's plus 30 or doctorate, has not gotten to that point, are they going to be compensated for that additional education when they are on that ladder? I understand they're compensated as soon as they get on, or when they get on there, for the $10,000 and also for the $7,000. But my concern is the education credits. And again, I may not have that correct, but I do want to get some clarification on that. And if that is part of the technical requirements of the blueprint. And I see Executive Director Heiss.
I thought we had a question that we'd come back to that question, so forth. Since we have an opportunity to, and this is only conditional approval, we can roll that into our condition once we have a further answer on that, and in February and in April.
So the conditions that we were imposing were not just the signatures, like in the. Are we talking about adding another condition potentially?
I don't know. Is that her
Yeah.
motion to what she's asking? I mean,
I
was
thought
that,
I thought the condition was just, and I won't say just, but to make sure that we have the documentation that the career letters were actually approved by all required parties.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that it went any further than that.
It does not currently, but I was thinking that you could amend the conditional approval motion to include that.
let me ask before we go there. The question I would ask though, the additional salaries for added certification and additional education, is not that negotiated with the unions? Is that just subject to negotiation?
Yes, it is.
All right. I just want to make sure that we are technically okay with what we're suggesting. If they've met the requirements of the career ladder, technically, and we now interject a matter for which is subject to union negotiations about how much you're paid for what degree and what have you. Our requirement is that you must have a $10,000 increase for a career ladder.
Mhm.
That's not subject to negotiation by the union. That's by law. I'm not sure that we could come in and say also that you now must add in your negotiation with your unions this involved in that. I just need clarification because that to me is subject to negotiation. Even though I agree with you technically, they should get it. I don't want for us to get in front of what would normally be a typical matter of union and board negotiation. I agree with the substance of what you're saying, but can we require them, subject prior to union negotiation with them, to impose a salary requirement that's outside of our purview? That's what we're looking at potentially. I'm not sure, but that's the way it sounds to me. Because that is subject to union negotiation.
Mhm. And
Because they want to negotiate a different number, a different cost effect to that, whatever it may be. And I'm not sure that we have the authority to basically say that this is what you should pay, other than what we have the legal authority to do. And that's the 7,000 and the 10,000. I'm not sure we could say you must put in a negotiation, this is the amount that you must give for an additional degree of certification. Is that not subject to union negotiation? I'm asking the attorney on this.
I mean, anything that's not set forth in statute is presumably subject to negotiation.
Right.
So,
okay.
And they should have negotiated. And they still have an opportunity to negotiate that in future negotiations. But I'm not sure we can impose that on it that's not subject to statute.
Okay, understood. So, but I'm still seeking clarification, not at this meeting right now, but clarification on that, if that is indeed a fact or not.
Whether or not it's actually
Right, and I can say that we are doing our best to get that answer for you as soon as possible during this meeting. So I don't know that I can promise that yet, but I feel like we might be able to. So one thought would be to hold on this motion and see if we can try to get an answer for you before you would need to vote. I also see several other hands, so I just want to make the chair aware of that.
fact. Even if they have not, whatever the answer is, we still cannot impose that. Even if they say we didn't put it in or we put it in. So I don't see a condition for why we should hold the motion up, even if they say that we didn't do it. We have no authority to do so. That's my point. That is subject to union negotiations. If they negotiated, fine. I hope they have. I hope that they've done so. If not, they need to do it in the future. But the question that I'm having is whether that they have or not, can we impose that subject outside of union negotiation? So even if we come back and say they didn't do it, what is our authority to put it in?
I don't know that I not disagreeing with you, but we could ask them if it is not clear, we could ask them to clarify how teachers in those situations will be compensated in their documentation.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. But the point that I'm making though is whatever the answer is, I am not sure outside of statutory authority, because if we open that up, that's a huge problem for us going forward, both legally and financially, because it will be saying that we're getting in front of items for which they are subject to union negotiations. The $10,000 isn't, the $7,000 isn't. And that would open us up for a huge array of challenges, I think, across the board. Even though I think they should have it. And in my opinion, it's a failure on the part of the union not to have negotiated that. But they negotiated. There's a hands up.
Yes, and I apologize because I think Member Lynch was first.
I was just going to reiterate the chair's questions about what are we legally bound to make decisions. I do have shared concerns about dipping into things that are union negotiated and what we are statutorily responsible for. I agree that the statutory responsibilities around nationally board certification and the movement to a career ladder seems clear. Things like master's levels are less clear. What I will add though is I think there should be at some point in time that the AIB come back and visit the impact of these on things like how many of our teachers are choosing master's degree programs, are choosing things like reading specialist programs, are choosing to move forward with administrative certificates and things like that. Like, has the career ladder, negotiated or not, impacted pathways for some of these other opportunities?
We'll come back and look at this question if we can find it, but hopefully at the end of the day, we need to vote on the motion before us. And I would want to have the information that Member Doss has suggested. I hope that they have it in that would provide as much relief as possible for our teachers. But if it's not, we do not have the authority unless I hear or see something else that suggests otherwise that we can impose. So we'll come back to it before we end the day. If we get some information.
Vice Chair Kerwin and Member Robinson also have their hands up.
Sure, I'm sorry.
Who's next?
You are, I believe.
Okay. So, Rachel, in the blueprint does not include, I think the chairman makes a very good point. I don't think the blueprint speaks to this issue, does it?
The issue of compensation for other additional, no, it does not.
So then I think the point he makes a very good point in my mind. I do have this question. Did other career ladders include compensation for these degrees?
Some definitely do. I don't want to speak about all of them because but many of them do. But primarily because they're using their traditional pay scale.
I see.
And they're duplicating it in the career ladder.
I got you.
They didn't create a separate.
And Anne Arundel is sort of unique in this regard and not doing that. And so that's why this becomes an issue in this case. Right. Okay. I get it. And I want to thank Member Doss for raising this issue because I think it is an important issue.
Member Robinson?
Sure. So I understand the statutory requirements around the 10,000 to 7,000. Were there any other considerations? I'm thinking of the parts about like incentivizing people to opt into the scale. Like, were there any other things around besides the actual dollar amounts, around like what should be happening with compensation on the career ladder? I know the part about incentivizing. Are there any other things like that?
Is your in the blueprint law?
Yeah, in the law.
Heidi?
Sure. The, so briefly, first, Mr. Chair, if there's a discussion that we need to have around legal advice, I'd prefer to have that in a closed session if possible, but I would just briefly say that the dollar amounts are the most specific and concrete requirements. There are other requirements throughout the career ladder statute, like the one you just cited, that generally talk about incentivizing opting in, but those dollar amounts are really and I think this is why these are sort of the minimum requirements this year for the career ladder submissions, because those are the most concrete items that are not subject to collective bargaining because they are set forth in statute.
Okay, thank you.
Member Stapleton.
Yep, so I've just want you all to know that I've been sitting here troubled by the when I asked the question. So if you get NBC, you have to go to career ladder, and if you want the $10,000, yes, is what I heard the answer. But I've been doing some digging because it does feel kind of icky that, you know, there's this message out there that become national board certified, get $10,000 more salary. That's the understanding of what the law is. But in reading the law, it does say it puts it on the career. If you're on the career ladder and at NBC, you get $10,000. So I do want to reiterate, and for anyone who's listening out there, that yes, it appears to me that this is in compliance with the law, that as part, if you're on that career ladder, you're going up, you get $10,000 by being NBC. But Member Kerwin was right that it's, or sorry, Vice Chair Kerwin, it's the fact that we have these two ladders, or a ladder and then the not ladder in Anne Arundel, that is causing a little bit of confusion about this, you know, and this contrast that may be not anticipated in looking at the law. So I just wanted to share with you my thought processes over the last 10 minutes, and I'm on the board, or I'm on board with this is compliant with the law.
So do we want
We'll come back to the item later on if you get some information before we leave today. So unless there are any additional questions, we voted on Montgomery and Prince George's County. We'll come back a little bit later on once we get the additional information on Anne Arundel County. So let's go on to the next item.
Okay, if we can, so we will come back and vote on that. So that motion is tabled.
Right.
If we can go back to thank you, and to the next slide. All right, so we have one LEA. Nope, there we go. We have one LEA whose full plan is not ready for approval yet. And that is Baltimore County, and that is solely pending receipt of a MOU for their career counseling program. And I would like to just ask Rachel Amstutz if you could just share where Baltimore County is in their process and what AIB has been doing to support that.
Absolutely. So the short and quick answer is they're very close. The longer process just has resulted from significant staffing changes at all three agencies in Baltimore County. that necessitated kind of almost starting over. So they've been working diligently, meeting quite a few times in December. We've been working with them October, November, December, to make sure that everything is moving forward. We have also offered the support of not only our staff, but also a strategic facilitator. So Latifa Durant, who has worked with us with several counties on the career counseling work, is partnering with them as well. We, at this point, know that an MOU has been drafted and is in agreement, just circulating now. We hope to get a copy of it very soon to be able to review and provide some feedback on that, and then they'll be moving forward to get it signed. We also are working to set up a date in early January to take this new MOU and work through it with all three teams, with Latifa and myself. Likely will also attend the meeting, but essentially I really do want to say they've been working very hard and have been collaborating with us to get feedback and to as they make these very significant changes. For example, they've shifted who's doing the hiring of these employees, and there have been some pretty significant changes that have required a lot more conversation and collaboration to get a new MOU in place.
Apologies. Are there any questions about Baltimore County and their career counseling MOU? So then the next step, which I think is the next slide, will be, as we've discussed previously, we have for Baltimore County, because they're the only LEA that will not have a pending the Anne Arundel vote approval or conditional approval. We have given LEAs until January 16th to submit their documents for review, so that we could hopefully recommend approval at the AIB's January 30th meeting. I think similar to the discussion you've had about the conditional approval districts, and I'll say this, and then if you all want to do something differently, we can do that. But I think we would, similar to other LEAs, we would accept an unsigned document by January 16th to review and give feedback on, and potentially would recommend conditional approval to the board at the January 30th meeting. And then I think either at that time or now you could decide what the deadline would be for receiving the signed document. I'm not saying that's the situation we will be in, but I could envision that they may not be able to submit a fully signed document by January 16th, given the holidays.
We'll come back to it then.
In January?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So if I think you can take down the slide deck. The next item is
Can I?
I'm
sorry.
apologize. Yes, I just saw
Executive
your
Director,
hand. Yeah.
Can I just ask one quick question about that? Because, if Baltimore County doesn't have a signed MOU, and this is now like year 2 that we haven't been able to execute career counselors or anything like that, do they have what happens to all of those funds? Are they rolled over? Do they return back? Do they go, sort of like what is happening with funds that have been set apart for these, for the staffing? And then will they be able to use those effectively moving forward, or do they get absorbed back?
So the career counseling funds, because it is set aside funds for career counseling, those monies are not reverting, and they are not reverting into the general fund balance. They are required to be held and restricted only for use for career counseling. Part of what, given many LEAs and workforce boards and community college partnerships did not spend all of the funds last year because it was the first year and the timing of staffing up. And so there are carryover funds that the LEAs are in the process of. Some of them, many of them made that decision as part of their revised MOU, but they need to jointly decide how those monies that have rolled over and carried forward will be spent by the various partners. And in many cases that it has been part of their revised MOU, but not in all cases. Rachel, I don't know if you want to say any more about that.
Sorry, it took me a second to find my buttons. No, I think that's pretty fair. We did, that was one thing that we flagged in their MOU, was that they did have a significant amount of carryover money from last year that was unallocated. And then also this year that there was money accruing. And so that's one thing we aim to work with Latifa on, is really looking at that. With one of our other counties, we were able to use some of those funds to increase the amount of career counseling that would happen right now, using some contractors instead of full-time employees. So we will work with them to try to find some ways to meaningfully use those funds.
And I also just wanted to share related to that. We've received reports from each of the partnerships on the use of their funds, and staff have been reviewing those reports and documents, and we will be coming back to you with an analysis, a summary of that, and some analysis of that, and possibly some recommendations in the new year around the use of the carry forward funds and use of funds in general. Are there any other questions?
All right, if it's in none, we need to get to our next item because we have our guests here waiting. If we come back to some additional items later on.
Yes.
So let's go to number 4, which you introduced to there in our waiting room, ready for us.
Yes,
They are on their way in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So our colleagues from the Maryland State Department of Education, Jeff Sanderson, who's a deputy superintendent, and Kelly Meadows, who is an assistant superintendent, are here to provide a briefing on teacher shortage and teacher pipeline data. Thank you for being here. And Kelly, I think you were going to share your screen, so you should have access to do that.
Okay, let me do that. Can you see the slide deck?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, Chair Leggett, Vice Chair Kerwin, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Kelly Meadows. I'm the Assistant State Superintendent for the Division of Educator Effectiveness at the Maryland State Department of Education. And we are here today to talk about Maryland's teacher workforce, specifically what are our supply needs and what is the supply and what are our demand needs. So without further ado, we are going to talk about, just very briefly, I'm going to give you the context, the landscape. What are we looking at here in Maryland? How many teachers do we have? Then we're going to dive into what are our demand needs, and we're going to look specifically at by diversity, by demographics. And then we're going to talk about what are we actually producing and how is it being distributed. I'm going to briefly touch on the national context, and then we'll end with some Maryland initiatives. So to get us started, here is an overview of the Maryland teacher workforce for school year 23-24. There were 63,220 teachers in our Maryland public schools last school year.
What's the significance of the color coding?
Regions, we tend to regionalize the state
All right, thank you.
Sure. All right, so diving into some of the trends. So looking at teacher race ethnicity trends, I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anyone, although we are seeing some gradual diversification. The teacher workforce remains predominantly white. And if I go too fast, just holler and I'll back up. Drilling down to first-year teachers, and that literally is defined as they are in their first year teaching in Maryland. The percentage of first-year teachers who are Black, African-American, or Hispanic Latino has more than doubled in the past 10 years, reaching 30%. However, more than half of first-year teachers in Maryland continue to be white.
But that's a pretty impressive growth
It
since
is.
21. That's very encouraging.
Now, when we look at teachers compared to students, we see that the disparity persists. It has persisted over the last 5 years. You can see that there is not a whole lot of change, regardless of the race or ethnicity you're looking at. Our Maryland teachers do not look like our Maryland students. Moving to attrition, we see that 10.7% of Maryland teachers did not return to teaching in Maryland during the 2023-2024 school year. And we can drill down into the LEA, we can drill down to the school. And in fact, this next slide is going to show you attrition by LEA. So you're going to see that line going across is at 12%, about 12% by LEA, teachers that did not return to that LEA. And we see a large disparity. So we have an LEA that saw as low as 7% and an LEA that saw as high as 18% attrition.
Kelly, can I ask a technical question? Does this include retirement or is this only pre-retirement leaves?
This includes everything.
So there could be retirements in this.
They could.
Do we have any data disaggregated by what is a retirement and what is?
We do, and I can certainly provide it to you. I will tell you that I actually took it out of this presentation because it's, yes, we can see who retired, but the vast majority of what you see when we dig into the exit data is unknown. And then when you drill into the unknown, the biggest portion is other reasons. So it doesn't tell us what we want to know.
Kelly, since we have a bunch of people asking questions, let me just throw in too. I would be really interested to see this broken out not by county, but by low performing schools or schools at which we're trying to get NBC teachers at. I think that would be a very interesting data point.
Low performing, high poverty, or both?
Probably both.
More information is better.
I mean, I'm also wondering, and this is probably specific to each of the LEAs, but any like exit interview data or, you know, if we have information on the rationale for why people are leaving, because some of this, if it's family is relocating or they have a family member that's sick, that's out of state, that some of those are uncontrollable, but some are unforced errors. If it's that, you know, either educators are not feeling valued or they feel like they're not compensated appropriately, or, you know, it'd be good to get some more information on the rationale for why some of these teachers are leaving.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right now, all 24 LEAs have their own exit surveys and their own processes for delivering those surveys. So that, again, lends to the data that we do have access to. Doesn't tell us what we want to know, but I absolutely agree digging into the reasons why individuals exit the profession is valuable.
Going back.
Oh, sorry, sir.
Going back to the question of what happens in some of our low performing schools, for me, a more indicative question would be, what are the potential transfers out of those schools? Mm-hmm. That number, if we had that.
Both we do. We do. So we can tell who's left the school but stayed in the LEA, and we can tell who has left the LEA but stayed in the state.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And Kelly, that was my question. These are people leaving the profession, not just transferring to another county, correct?
This slide right here only shows those individuals who have left that LEA, but that does not necessarily mean that they left teaching. This slide, let me go back one. When we look at the state line, which is the 10.7%, they have left Maryland. They are no longer teaching in Maryland.
Okay.
Thank you.
And one other real quick question. Is the attrition, do you have it broken down by demographics, racial groups?
We do. Let's see. I'm going to just skip one and then I'll go back to it since you've asked. So looking at the trend by race, ethnicity, this is what we see.
So sadly, the African American have the higher rate of attrition. That's unfortunate.
Yes, sir. Now, we did see a slight decrease in attrition for all race ethnicities, with the exception of Asian teachers. Between 23 and 24, it's small. Let me pop back up to by years of experience. So who's leaving? How long have they been teaching? So you see that we have individuals who have been in the profession less than 3 years, all the way up to those individuals who have been in the profession for more than 20. And again, probably not a surprise, new teachers are the teachers that are most likely to leave teaching, with about 1 in 7 leaving the teaching profession.
Kelly, do we know 1 in 7, are these conditionally certified? Do we have it broken down by conditionally certified or like anything about their preparation programs?
We can, not by preparation program, Dr. Lynch, but we can break it down by the license that they hold in the staffing collection.
Kelly, just remind me and maybe others, when did the conditional licensure go into effect, since we do have some variation in pathways?
Conditional licensure has been on the books for decades. Before it was called a conditional license, it was called a provisional license. I held a provisional license a long time ago. So it's been around for quite a long time. I think we're talking about it a lot more now because, as you're going to see further into this presentation, you know, the numbers that we're seeing are significantly greater than what we've seen in the past. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, looking at the vacancies. So every year MSDE asks our LEAs to report the number of unfilled teaching positions as of the first day of school. So you can see here that this year, this is this year's data, 24-25. There were approximately 1,600 vacancies, 1,619 vacancies, which is a decrease from last year, which was also a decrease from the year before. So really, we're back in alignment to what we saw in 21-22.
Do you have this data as a percentage of the number of teacher positions that each LEA might have available? Like broken down by LEA, but as a percentage of what was possible.
I'd have to go look. And the reason that I say that is because this collection lives outside of the staff collection. And so we're collecting this one way. And in order to compare it to what we collect in the staffing collection, I don't know if there's a one-to-one alignment. I need to look into that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a similar question, Justin, just because we know we did see an increase in positions as a result of ESSER and ARPA funds. And so I'm wondering if these what is the total percentage of vacancies compared to total number of positions during those same years?
We can do that. We can. Now that I'm thinking of it, we absolutely can, because we have the total number of filled positions from each LEA in the staffing report. So we can use we can put those numbers together, yes.
And I was thinking about it because of the slide a couple earlier for teacher attrition when you had it broken out by LEAs, like obviously very vastly different sized LEAs. And so like a certain percentage in one county it means a different number of teachers from another county. So it kind of made me start thinking about it in that way, just the scale of the problem.
It does seem like, Kelly, though, there would be some complexity in that number because you would also have to theoretically, you'd have to take into account the size of the population of pupils, right? Because if student populations are decreasing, then theoretically you would need less teachers, and it may be hard to suss that out, but not to add more complexity. The other thing that I wanted to say as I'm looking at this chart, and I don't, this is me maybe being the eternal optimist, but this is significant, and if we continue to see these downward trends, if the number of vacancies decreases by an additional 300 in the upcoming year, then that is significant, and it does align with some of these actions we've taken in terms of the blueprint, in terms of elevating the teacher salaries and the installation of the career ladder and the promotion of the national board certification. So this could be early evidence that some of what we're doing in the blueprint is having a significant impact on employment trends.
Member Manco, we're going to come back and maybe look separately at the impacts. I just want to make sure that we get the information out now, and we'll talk about the impacts. I'll come back to you to pick up your discussion on what we impact. So let's get through what are the factual foundation for which we make an assertion about the impacts first.
Absolutely. So we're gonna shift to supply and distribution. So we've looked at several metrics for demand. Looking at supply, we're looking at those individuals who are enrolled in our Maryland approved teacher preparation programs. The blue bar represents our traditional programs, the orange our alternative programs. And you can see that we are, we're coming up from those low levels that reached an all-time low in 2016, 2017. So we're on the right track. We did dip a little bit between 22 and 23. We don't yet have data for 23, 24. Hopefully it's in the right direction. But you can see that we're still approximately 1,900 short from what we saw in 2013. And these are individuals enrolled. We can break this down by demographics. On the left, you see traditional program candidates. Again, no surprise, predominantly white. On the right, again, predominantly white, but a lot closer. So we have consistently seen that our alternative programs, sometimes we call them our resident teacher programs, they are recruiting more diverse candidates. Unfortunately, those programs are really only located at this point in time in our central corridor. They are not available in every one of our LEAs.
Do you also have, it's one thing to see enrollment, but what we're interested in is graduates.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you have a slide on? Yes. Okay.
I do. And so let me skip around just a little bit and I can come back. So looking at 22, 23 completers, and we call them completers because they've completed every aspect of the teacher preparation program that they need to complete in order to be considered successfully having completed that licensure program. So we can see that we have the blue is our traditional, the yellow line is our alternative completers. And one way to look at the gap, and there are multiple ways, but one way to look at this gap is to add the number of vacancies that we see in the preceding year. So we have our graduates and they graduate anytime between December and June or July, and then that next school year. So in this slide right here, you see the 22-23 graduates. You see the vacancies at the beginning of the 23-24 school year, which was 1,941. But then you also can take into account and should take into account the number of individuals who are teaching in positions that hold conditional licenses. And those individuals are not yet fully prepared and they are not fully professionally licensed. So when we add those together, we have over 8,000 individuals, which gives us a gap of 6,771. So this is one way and a common way that states look at the gap in their supply and demand.
Does the traditional completers include out-of-state completers or only Maryland prep programs?
Only Maryland. And I will remind this board that we are an import state. We have always been an import state. We import between 50 and 60% of our teacher workforce. So we rely heavily on recruitment from other states preparing teachers. And I'm just going to jump back to close this loop on conditionals. So I had mentioned before, we've seen a steady increase. This is the increase that we've seen over the past 5 years. 24-25 data is not ready yet to be published, but I anticipate it will be very similar to 23-24 numbers. Now, the good news here is this is an opportunity because our conditionally licensed teachers are significantly more diverse, especially when we're talking about Black African American, than our traditionally prepared teachers. So LEAs have an opportunity, the state has an opportunity to really cultivate these teachers, and if they can retain them, while they're preparing them, which of course is a unique challenge, then we can diversify the workforce by really investing in our conditionally licensed teachers. So back to Member Mako's point, I think it's great news that our vacancies are coming down because we're able to recruit more teachers, including what you see here. We're recruiting more conditionally licensed teachers who are more diverse.
Kelly, the responsibility for working to try to convert some of these conditionally certified teachers into full certification, that falls with each of the LEAs, or is that a responsibility of MSDE? Are there do we have success stories or programs where we have a high number of conditionals that are being converted into full certs?
So to your first question, it is the responsibility of the employer to track that individual, to support that individual to full licensure. Now, of course, our office is always here with resources and can help. But yes, at the end of the day, it's the employer's responsibility. I think that's a great question that you ask about success stories, and are there any programs that are really gearing themselves to those conditionally licensed teachers? Because anecdotally, I know that there are, and the Maryland Higher Education Commission just I want to say yesterday or the day before, sent out a survey to all of our educator preparation programs, specifically asking them to share information, which they will then share with us, on all of the programs that they are developing or modifying to support specifically those conditionally licensed teachers. So we're interested to see what that has to say.
Kelly, you may want to remind the group and the general public, what are the limits on the length of conditionally licensed individuals?
Sure. So it's really, really messy right now because we just repealed and replaced all the licensure regulations. And in that repeal and replacement, we went from one model to a brand new model. So starting April 1st, 2022, individuals who are recruited into a conditionally licensed position, which by the way, LEAs are not able, at least per regulation, they should not be hiring conditionally licensed teachers unless they cannot fill that position with a professionally licensed applicant. So for anyone that got a conditional license April 2024 or into the future, it's a 5-year credential for every area with one very notable exception, and that is special education, which is our highest need area. And the reason is that there's federal law that says that if you cannot permanently or temporarily waive licensing credentials for special educators, there are some exceptions embedded into that law. And our alternative and traditional programs meet the terms of those exceptions. So what the law says is for those individuals, they can have 3 years in that status. So the conditional license for special educators specifically is 3 years. All other teachers is 5. So where are our conditionally licensed teachers? In all of our schools in Maryland, and this is the 22-23 school year, about 8.2% of our teachers were teachers with emergency or provisional licenses, which just is the ESEA way of saying conditionally licensed. In Maryland, they're called conditionally licensed teachers. But we see, and again, not surprisingly, unfortunately, is that there is a higher percentage of these teachers in our high poverty schools. There is also a higher percentage of out-of-field teachers, which means that I hold a license in social studies, but I am teaching English and teaching out of my licensure area. And then there is a significant difference in the number of inexperienced teachers, which is defined as having 3 or less years of experience working in our high poverty schools. Unfortunately, Maryland's problem is not unique. The Learning Policy Institute published a 2024 update on a national context of teacher shortages, and they found that 49 states plus DC employed an estimated 365,000 teachers who were not fully certified for their teaching assignments, which means that they could be teaching out of their licensure area, they could be conditionally licensed. There's several criteria you could dig into. They also found that 30 states plus DC published vacancy data with 41,920 unfilled teaching positions, just not filled at all, which is, again, we're at around the 1,400 mark. And then estimates indicate that a minimum of 406,000 positions were either unfilled or filled by teachers not fully certified for their assignment. So this is absolutely a national issue. So what is Maryland doing about it? This board knows better than anyone. Pillar 2 is very, very much invested in recruiting and retaining teachers. Of course, the career ladder establishes a way for teachers to stay in the classroom and not be forced to go into central office positions or in school administration to get those comparable salary increases that they would not have access to if they stayed in the classroom. As you know, there's a $60,000 minimum salary that goes into effect in July of 2026, and we have seen the 10% increase over the last 3 years, so slowly raising those salaries. And then, of course, the salary incentives for national board certification associated with the career ladder. We also have, again, with that repeal and replacement, we have really looked at making licensure as flexible as possible while still being rigorous. There are currently 9 pathways to Maryland professional licensure. We saw in the 2023 Educator Shortage Reduction Act that it expanded the definition of our alternative programs to really hone in on that early childhood educator, which again is another very critical shortage area in Maryland. Last year in 2024, Senate Bill 771 opened the options for teacher candidates enrolled in our Maryland programs to demonstrate their basic skills proficiency, to demonstrate that they're ready to enter the classroom, their pedagogical knowledge. In the licensure regulations, the state board and the professional standards board developed an in-district training pathway that really focuses on conditionally licensed teachers. It allows districts to work in-house with an institution of higher education to prepare those teachers to teach in their schools. And then finally, we removed licensure assessment barriers where they really weren't needed. For instance, for many years, we required our professional and technical education teachers to demonstrate basic skills mastery, many of which who have been out of school for many, many years because they have been, honing their expertise in that field. And now they want to come back into teaching, let's say like a plumber or a welder or a carpenter. We were asking them to take that assessment, and it was a huge barrier. So we have eliminated barriers such as those. We no longer require teachers to advance to a master's degree to maintain licensure. Of course, the focus has been shifted to national board certification. And national board certification continues to be a direct way to renew a Maryland educator license. MSDE has been implementing a marketing campaign since 2018, but it could have been 2017. And we do this through a variety of means, including a combination of digital and print advertising, social media, free, paid. We have a partnership with the Maryland Transportation Authority. We've had partnerships with Radio One, digital billboards, platforms on streaming services such as Roku, a lot of different things happening on an annual basis for the marketing campaign. And then we also have our Teach Maryland website. And this is really meant to be a hub for individuals, whether they're high school students, career changers, college students, existing teachers from other states. You can come to this site and get links to licensure information. There's links to all of our LEA human resources, web pages, so they can apply for employment. Our educator preparation programs are all on this site. And then the financial incentives that are coming out of MHEC are also linked here. And that is all. I have included a glossary of terms that you can refer to. These are the terms that were used within the slide deck.
I have a quick question, Kelly. First of all, excellent report, and we thank you for this good data. Are you tracking national board certified teachers at high poverty schools?
Yes.
Good. And because there is this incentive of $7,000, and I think it'll be important for us to understand if that is making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad to hear that you are tracking that.
We are, but just as a reminder, the $7,000 incentive is for those working in low performing schools.
Low performing schools.
We can track both.
Well, that's really what I meant. Low performing schools, where you are, and there's probably a high correlation between high poverty and low performing. But in any case, you are tracking that. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Have we seen any bump up?
I don't have the data in front of me.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd love to make a suggestion. I don't know who runs that website that you just the Teach Maryland website, but last week I was at an information session for students who are interested in going into teaching at University of Maryland College Park, and the Teaching Fellows program that runs out of MHUC was total news to them. And so on your Teach Maryland website, when I saw the slide deck, I went there and looked at the scholarship information. And if you go to the Teaching Fellows, it doesn't say like full ride, tuition, room and board in stars. And it just says, we'll help support students. It's like, well, how? And then the links there are, the first one is to the pretty arduous application process. And the second one is to general MHEC scholarships. It's not about it doesn't go straight to the Teaching Fellows link. So I think that would be a nice thing to add.
Yeah.
In terms of meeting the ambitious requirements of the blueprint for more teachers, given we have a large number of provisional teachers and we still maintain a shortage, and assuming that we excel on all of the programs to accelerate, how long would it take, in your estimate, if you can, for us to significantly reduce the provisional teacher, shore up the shortages that already exist, as well as fulfilling the very ambitious requirement that is outlined in the blueprint? Any idea about that?
I don't have a solid idea on that. I think one of the things that we need to see, which we should see in February, is how many of our LEAs are going to take advantage of the alternative pathway to licensure called the in-district pathway. So applications for the first round are due in February. I wouldn't be surprised if not too many jumped in this year and kind of let some of their colleagues do it like as a pilot. I know that there are a few that will absolutely apply, but I don't know how many. Depending on how that goes, how that looks, and if it's successful, I could see other LEAs definitely wanting to jump on board with that. But I think that's going to take a few years. So that's one pathway that could potentially help to close that gap. But there are a lot of other variables like, can we increase the recruitment into our traditional and our alternative programs? Can we potentially develop more traditional programs that aren't necessarily master's degree programs because it's not a requirement anymore in Maryland? Should we be looking at things like a post-baccalaureate certificate licensure program that is much quicker and is geared toward that individual that's coming in with the content background? So there are a lot of variables. I don't have one answer for you.
Thank you. Any further question?
Yeah, I have one question. So, like, as a teacher right now, like, I'm aware of the realities of how our schools, operate and things like that. And I understand the supply and demand side as you've shared it. To what extent does your marketing take into account the public perception of teaching and like the things that are going on in schools on through social media? Like, we're trying to hype up education as a career path, but like how are we combating the general public perception of what it is to be an educator?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we could definitely do a better job with focusing on perception. In complete transparency, we have an extremely small budget to do this each year. So I want to be reasonable, but I also think that we need to, and we have never done this through the marketing campaign, we really need to target our existing teacher workforce. Because when our existing teachers are on social media at the end of the day and they're complaining about their jobs and they're not satisfied and they're not happy and that's what they're putting out there, that's not going to recruit more teachers. And they are sitting in front of our students and they are a pool of potential recruits. These are our next generation of teachers. And so I think that we also have to ask ourselves, how can we make our current workforce feel more supported, happier, and more satisfied with their jobs, because they're not going to want to recruit the next generation of teachers if they're not. And we're not seeing that, our high school students are interested in becoming teachers. So
Yeah.
I think it's both.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, and what you just said kind of reminded me, there's a saying that we say is, teachers' working conditions are students' learning conditions. And so the things that teachers are experiencing, the students are seeing it. And so that comes from things from, school construction to discipline to all of to testing. Like, we have to realize that when we impose all these things on our students and they see that, that doesn't make them want to become educators. And I think that that's the part of the conversation that, it feels like we're not completely honest about sometimes. Like, we want to recruit people, but, to your point, children have experienced school for 13 years and they're not interested in doing it anymore because of the way that our schools are operating sometimes. And so I think that as we think about like the Teach Maryland website and ways that we're trying to attract people, we have to also think about how do we make schools be places that children want to be, so that they're places that they want to work in the future.
Kelly, do you have any data on the trends right now in higher ed enrollment in teacher prep programs?
Yeah, different than what I showed. Did you catch the slide on total, like numbers and demos?
Right. So the total numbers in the beginning, I think those showed that we were slightly increasing, right? In terms of we are starting to see some promising improvements in teacher enrollment. Did I get that correct?
You did. Since 2016, 2017, we've seen a slow increase. There was a small dip between 22 and 23. But again, our current landscape, and this is anecdotal, is predominantly either bachelor program, traditional bachelor program or master's program. We don't see a whole lot of post-baccalaureate programs. So something to think about. Like, I think if the landscape changed, we could potentially see that growth increase for enrollment.
How are the what does the TAM enrollments look like?
I don't have that data in front of me.
I think it goes into your conversation about who in high school, what does it look like in high school in terms of interest in growing your own programs and things like that.
Yeah, and I think more importantly, do they actually then go into teacher preparation and graduate from teacher preparation and enter the Maryland workforce?
Any further questions? If not, I want to thank you for a very sobering presentation. I think this gives us an awful lot of insight in terms of the challenge for us. And we will talk a little bit later on, following up with Member Manco in terms of some of the implications of what these numbers reveal. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Are you there?
Yes.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break and we'll start back in just a moment. 5 minutes. Thank you. Are we there?
We do not have all the members back yet.
We're missing Jennifer, Mrs. Lynch, Board Member Lynch.
We have member Lynch.
All right.
I'm
we
here.
need member Stapleton.
On our agenda at this point in time, we are back to, I think you had a question reference to the earlier issue of Anne Arundel County. May want to respond to.
You would like to go back to that?
Yeah, I think you had a question with reference to Member Dawson's question earlier.
Yes, we were able to get an answer to the question. And just to reiterate the question, it is once a teacher moves onto the career ladder, do they receive additional compensation for earning additional degrees or education credits? And the response is that they did not negotiate additional compensation for that on the career ladder at this time. They do, as I said before, when they move from the traditional scale to the career ladder, they do honor wherever they are on the traditional scale on the career ladder. But in terms of if you were earning additional degrees or credits after you opt into the career ladder, they have not negotiated that at this time.
Okay. Well, that's our answer. Member Dawes?
Member Dawes?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you and your staff so much for confirming that and reaching out and getting that information. And I do understand, and we all understand that this is not part of the technical requirements of the blueprint. So therefore, it's an negotiable discussion or items, and that's not our area, so to speak. But with that clarification, in my opinion, it doesn't fully support the incentive to attain an MBC, which undermines the blueprint's intent. But then again, that's just coming from a board member and just putting that on the record and not knowing that that does not impact the technical requirements of the blueprint and our ability to approve or not approve a particular career ladder.
I'd just like to voice my support for those comments that Member Doss just made.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we are back to the original question for Anne Arundel County. That is to give a conditional approval, condition upon meeting the certification requirements. As noted before, we're not in a position to require additional incentives outside of, at least pay outside of the $10,000 and $7,000 requirement. And so with that, I'm going to move that we go ahead and condition approve Anne Arundel County for conditional approval. There's a second to the motion.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Okay. There's no further discussion. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. How many questions, how many hands were raised there? 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 4. Okay. All opposed? Abstentions?
Here.
Got 2 abstentions. Okay,
No, I'm sorry. Can I just clarify, Member Doss? Can I just clarify your vote?
it was an abstention, I thought. Were you opposed or, sorry, were you abstaining? Which one?
I do not support it.
Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right,
And I was abstaining.
all right, an abstention. Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, they're under conditional approval. Okay, let's move on to the next item, which we may start with Member Manco in terms of impact and challenges. And I sorry I interrupted you, but I wanted to get all the information in, and then we'll go to your assessments starting from the impact of the numbers you just talked about. Member Manco.
Oh, I mean, I don't need to reiterate what was already stated, but I think just from the early data, there's grounds for optimism and hopefully trends continue in the same direction.
Well, let me make a couple of comments. There are grounds for improvement, but given where we are and the challenges we face, in many ways we can only improve. Take in mind the following that we saw. We saw a huge number of provisional or conditional teachers. We saw a gap of a small improvement of the vacancies that we currently have. The blueprint requires for us to meet all of the elements of the program a substantial increase in teachers. And the programs that were outlined, in my opinion, were best where you get a few hundred here or there. The pipeline in terms of teachers, to me, did not seem overwhelmingly high. And we continue to rely upon a substantial number of potential teachers from outside the state. I don't see that as being optimistic. That means that there is a challenge for us. Even if, and this is why I raised the question, what if we were successful on most of the elements and most of the things that we are doing in order to increase the number of teachers, both growing our own, increasing substantially the number of state of Maryland. There is no way that that changes quickly. Hopefully over a period of time, we will see some improvements in that. And hopefully we will be able to make some improvements in areas that are desperately needed. In addition to that, if you looked at the chart carefully as it related to provincial teachers or conditional teachers, there were well over 40% of those teachers in low performing schools. That's a huge number. Right at the area where we have our most difficult challenge, we have an inordinate number of teachers who are conditional teachers. That's a real challenge. And our plan, as you may recall, is that providing the additional $7,000 is at least one step toward improving that situation. So on all of those factors I've just described, I see a real challenge. And I didn't see anything that I can jump off to say, this is going to change and change rather quickly. I think there are things that were described that over a period of time may have some impact, but we're looking for an immediate impact, immediate change. That did not come across to me in those numbers. And so I've heard discussions about what we need, and I think that we all are in agreement that whatever we need to do in order to improve the pipeline to get additional teachers out there, we are doing or looking at doing. And so if there's a magic wand or some program or some direction that we can go, I think we're ready to consider along with MSDE, in and all things about it. But I don't see anything that's going to change those numbers anytime soon. That's a sobering reality for me, and that's difficult to admit. But I think it's based accurate. So if I'm wrong about what I've just heard and wrong about the numbers, please inform me, because that's what I saw and that's what I heard.
If I could jump in and just echo the sentiment of the chair, I do feel I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of repeat what I said earlier about our teachers' working conditions, our students' learning conditions. And I think that there's not a great conversation around what it's like to be in a school and why children might not want to do that as a career. And I think that, I challenge any politician, like, become a substitute. Just step in the building. just be there for a couple of days and see what it's like. I think that might affect the way that we handle negotiations, like, with the career ladder, and like how we decide how we're going to compensate teachers, and how we, whether we nickel and dime or whether we try to get the best possible outcomes that we can. But I think that a lot of people who are in positions of authority don't have the I guess the experience or just the wherewithal to know like what's happening in schools and why children might not want to do that as a career.
Well, as a former politician, I've done that. I've had a day or two where I spent in schools just to observe to see what's happening, and taught several classes. And at the end of the day, I was exhausted, both emotionally and psychologically and physically. And I had a greater appreciation for what teachers are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I felt really, really, in many ways, sorry for some of the things that our teachers had to do.
And students can see that on our faces too.
Yeah.
So I think that's the real issue that we're dealing with right now, is like there's a lot of things that we're asking of teachers, and you can't always hide, how you're feeling about the circumstances that you're placed in. And students see that. They're not, especially at the time when you're trying to decide on a college to attend or a major or whatever like that. You have enough emotional intelligence to tell when somebody's going through it.
Yeah. Well, they saw it on my face, I'm sad to say. So I was ready to bail by the first period.
One of the things one of the things we observed on the commission when we studied a half a dozen or so high-performing schools is that in these high-performing schools, there is a different kind of work environment in the schools. They have teachers don't have as many required FaceTime hours with students, and they have more time to work with their colleagues on the curriculum and pedagogical issues, even in some cases doing applied research on strategies to improve student performance. And there's a much more professional environment in these high performing schools in that regard. I mean, the schools are evaluated more as a total school performance versus individual teacher assessments, because there is much more of a team approach. And we've tried to build that into the blueprint through this notion of collaborative time, by reducing the number of hours that teachers are actually fully responsible for a class, and providing more time to have those kind of interactions and collaboration with their colleagues in the school building. And this teacher shortage really impacts that, because the teachers aren't there for us to hire. So I mean, this is an issue this pipeline issue has just got to be addressed, because we can't really create first of all, have the standard, the quality and standard of teachers in the classrooms overall, but moreover, build this sense of professionalism within the schools and the profession, until we can address this pipeline issue and have the teachers, the fully qualified teachers we need to be hired and be part of the workforce.
I'm sorry,
I stood done. Yeah.
I didn't finish my comments, but I wanted to say.
Sure.
I have been asked a series of questions by the media and others, elected officials, about what is my reaction, what is the board's reaction in reference to comments made by the governor. And I have not given any full response to that for two reasons. One, I wanted to absorb to see basically what the governor had said, have at least some further discussion about the numbers and the impact to make sure that I got my head around that, to have a discussion here among board members. But I am at this point prepared to say, at least as it relates to compensatory time, that in terms of the direction that the governor has expressed, I feel reasonably confident from a program standpoint that it will be very difficult for us to fulfill numbers required in order to get the very worthy goal of compensatory time. And so I am the direction and approach under certain conditions. I am not sure what length of time we ultimately come down to say, this is about the amount of time that we need in order to get it right. Secondly, I think that we need to reimagine to some degree how we deal with the whole issue. Thirdly, I think that we need to make sure, and I've heard the governor say this and others in his circle say this, that the ancillary impacts of special education and some other things, we can still address that or should address that while we look more thoroughly at the overall issue as it relates to the additional time requirements and the number of teachers that are required. That it does not have to be a one-size-fits-all. That we can develop some pilots, we can address some of the challenges with special ed and some of the other things. And so that as you look at how do we address this, I want to make sure that those things are addressed. But in concept and principle, I've heard the governor, I heard his staff repeatedly say their strong support for the blueprint. He has made that abundantly clear for a number of occasions, and every time he's spoken about it, he's said that. So I feel very confident about his position, where he's going. And what he has looked at least in some of the discussions that I've had with some of the staff members, are approaches that at least starts to address the programmatic changes that we need to make. And in this area, at least for a temporary period of time, we need to make a programmatic change. But we can do that by fulfilling as much of the fidelity as we need. We could do that by addressing the continuation of the special ed challenges that we face and developing pilots and other approaches as we go forward in terms of compensatory time. Those are the kinds of things that I am supportive of. And what I've heard, at least from the governor repeatedly, in formal and informal discussion that he's had, is that is something which he is prepared for and has really staked out a very strong case to make. Strong support for the blueprint, adjustments, at least in this area. There may be some other things I may or may not agree with or disagree, but at least as it relates to this area, under those conditions, I think that we should take a positive position about it. And so I did not want to say that without telling you first. I've not said this to anyone other than the people on this call here. But that's where I am at this point in time. If you want to discuss my position and what I've said, I think that's open. But make sure what I've said, that strong support for the blueprint, the continuation of the reevaluation of this, how we can reprogram this, look at some additional pilots, address some of the concerns of the ancillary or unintended potential impacts with special ed and some other things. And then we fine tune just how long that may be. I thought it would be shorter, but after looking at the numbers and the amount of work that we have to do, it may be a little bit longer than I'd anticipate. So that's the only piece of this for me in terms of indecision about how long this would be. But I think it may end up being longer than I had originally thought. I was thinking a 2-year window, but this is my opinion, is probably greater than that. So I'm gonna throw that open and from some of our discussions and impacts, and put that on the table, Madam Executive Director.
Yes, we have several hands. Member Lynch.
So you've taken me in a new direction because I have my hand up for something else, but I think it all sort of weaves together nicely because I think I agree that we have to be clear about the realities on the ground and where we are. And where I was starting was to sort of wonder what how we are bringing all of this information together as the AIB, data, informal information, the realities on the ground, to do the assessment of the effectiveness of the blueprint. A lot of the foundations of the blueprint are based in some pre-COVID analyses and studies and things like that. And we know that what teachers are facing today in the classroom just looks very, very different. And so I think we have to be clear about updating our research and our analyses to be reflective of what teachers are currently facing. And to also be addressing, the blueprint is very strong in addressing things like improving teacher quality by professionalizing the teacher profession in terms of pay and offering incentives in certain ways. We also hear, and I think Member Robinson has reflected upon this, it's also about school culture. And you can't do that without effective principal leadership and central office leadership that understands how to do that. And so what are we doing to kind of think strategically about professional development for our leaders, ongoing professional development for our teachers? Because if we have 10% of our teachers are leaving every year, we cannot, and we're only graduating 1,500 teachers from our programs every year, we cannot possibly close that gap. So we also have to stop the rates of attrition and address those as well. And I'm not sure that we have a clear answer as to what those policy levers are at this time, because I think they may have shifted post COVID a little bit as to what our teachers feel like they need and what we need to do. And at the same time, we do need to be thinking strategically about how we are helping to bring more teachers to the profession, how we are changing the face of what development of our teachers looks like, both those coming into the profession and ongoing. And I think it is time for us as the AIB to think strategically about how we can preserve the intent while also being innovative in the way that we think about implementation moving forward.
I had some additional dates and time for follow-up discussion, and we may be impacted a little bit by our legislative calendar because there's some things that as a board we need to think through. So at the end of this meeting, we're going to discuss some next steps about how we start to address what you just stated and how we also respond to the legislative calendar that is coming pretty quickly.
Member Robinson.
Thank you. I'm sensitive to both of those previous comments. I was thinking about a lot about what Vice Chair Kerwin just said about the importance of collaborative time and what that means for professionalizing teaching. And then kind of reconciling that with the reality of not having enough teachers in order to employ them to facilitate collaborative time. So I kind of see both of those things. And I can appreciate the idea of I guess kind of giving ourselves time to ramp up the pipeline of teachers so that we can actually implement collaborative time the way it should be. I guess my only wondering would be, what conversations are we having to ensure that the pipeline is bolstered without just saying, oh, we're gonna hope that it happens better in the future. Like, what are we doing differently at the moment that we say we're going to give ourselves more time to ramp up collaborative time? What are we putting in place to make sure that we're not going to have the same problem? I know you said more than 2 years, but whatever that time frame is, like, how do we know it's not going to be the same situation? What are we doing to change working conditions? What are we doing to Member Lynch's point, to gather information about what are the working conditions? What are teachers saying? What are their concerns? What are we going to do in the meantime to make sure that we don't have the same conversation and the same presentation about shortages in 3 years or 4 or 5 or whatever?
I couldn't agree more. And as I said before, we need to have a further discussion about this. And everything is on the table in order to improve that pipeline. But as I indicated before, even if we are successful in some of the things that we've just described, the time element will still be a difficult challenge for us. And so we should think broadly about what we need to do. We need to think of some creative ways in how we address collaborative time. Let me just give an example of something that was stated, and I think I heard the executive director talk about this. Two things: the 20/80 ratio, or the 60/40 ratio, or some combination of that. Is that number evidenced by some additional support that we can look at that says that's the right number? Secondly, does it always mean that in order to increase collaborative time, we have to actually hire as many new teachers as the plan requires? Someone suggested that if we had paid and provide additional incentives to teachers, we can intend to strengthen the day or lengthen the day with existing teachers. Because when you're doing that, you're paying existing teachers far more, but you may be reducing the overall cost because you're not bringing in an additional work year that brings in a whole lot of other things associated with that. All of those kinds of questions about what we mean by collaborative time, how we re-envision that, can we develop some pilots? All of that is up for discussion. As I said before, and everything should be on the table of how we address that, because I'm concerned, just as you are, that a couple of years from now, we'll still have the same conversation. I think it's the Vice Chair Curran.
Yeah. I think just to Member Robinson's very good point about what do we, if there is some pause in the collaborative time, what are we doing to increase the pipeline, the size of the workforce? I know Executive Director Heiss there are several new programs that have been created within the Department of Education. The Grow Your Own program, I think, which has shown some signs of success. But from what I read in the paper, it sounds like the governor is sensitive to this point as well, and that if I recall correctly, Executive Director Heiss, wasn't there some intent to invest additional monies into building the pipeline if there was a pause?
I do believe that the governor talked about that. Yes.
Do you remember any specifics?
I'm not sure that any specifics have been shared yet. Other than I think it along the lines of sort of piloting with LEAs how collaborative time could be implemented and different models for that.
But I thought there was some reference to actually growing the pipeline and how important it is.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just don't know that there were specifics.
The details, okay.
Other than funding, I think you're referring to Grow Your Own.
Right.
And that program was created in law last year, but it was not actually funded.
Yeah. I just want us to make sure that we understand the magnitude of the problem. Again, and everything is on the table of how we should increase the quantity and the quality of the teachers that we have in our workforce. That's a given. And all of these programs that I've heard about that we've implemented, if we implemented them all today and we scored successfully across the board, that will not change our problem in the next 2 or 3 years. So I don't start with those programs won't be successful. The sad thing about it, I think we will have some success in it. The second sad part of thinking about it, the good thing about it is we have some success. The sad thing about it is that it's going to take time to increase those numbers in terms of the funding. So let's be very clear about it. There is nothing out there in the next year or two, if you look at those numbers, that's going to immediately change that. And that's why I made the statement that I made. Grow Your Own, additional scholarships, marketing campaigns, all of them. None of that will change this in the next 2 or 3 years. So that's where we are. So I wanted to be clear about where we are. And there are some additional questions that are out there that we need to in some way respond to. Today is not the time, and I hope to have some further discussion with you individually or collectively about how we approach some of the information that we receive in terms of letters and requests. We will have that discussion, and I think before we leave, the executive director is going to give you some dates and time. We have to turn that around quick because of the legislative calendar, and we may have to impinge a little bit during the holidays but these will be smaller discussions about the areas which you are working in order to get some assessment about some of the issues that are out there, other potential changes that are there. So I wanted to be clear about our approach to that, but we will be working literally through the holidays, and we have some tight time windows in order to respond because I think the governor comes out with his budget in early January. There are some potential legislative proposals that are out there. We need to have a grip on to what proposals we want to support, and also what legislative changes we think we should be willing to accept and give. All of that is going to come for us in the next couple of weeks. So we plan to come back and try to fulfill the request of having a timely discussion with them. But it's tight due to the time frame that we have to respond to in Annapolis. Did you have anything you wanted to add to this, Madam Executive Director, especially in terms of time and getting back, pinpointing opportunity to talk to people?
I would just say that I think we want to, I know we've talked about, we have a regularly scheduled board meeting and a joint board meeting at the end of January. But I think we are going to want to have a special meeting earlier in January to continue this discussion. And we will, I'll follow up with you, so we don't have to do scheduling here, but I'll follow up with you on a potential time and date for that, so we can see what will work.
Oh, and I also include, by the way, the PZAM letter that we received. There are some things on there that I think you probably can work with. Some things on there, at least for me, I think just simply a non-starter. But that's left up to the board to look at and have some evaluation with that, plus all the other information that's circulating out there. So that's part of the broader discussion that we would have as well. But we need to coordinate that appropriately and see how board responds. I believe some of that may be translated at some point into legislative changes, and we need to have at least some general response about how we approach that. And that's part of this ongoing dialogue, but that's just one piece of it. There are others outside the letter as well. And there may be some additional ones that you may feel we should bring forward. Okay, are there any further questions or comments? All right. Madam Executive Director, are we ready for further
Yes.
discussion?
Can we move on to the next agenda item, which is an update on the state agency implementation plans? And we've been continuing to work with the state agencies that submitted implementation plans as they are receiving feedback from AIB staff and working on addressing items and revising their plans. Today, we do have the Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports to recommend to you for approval. And we have found that they meet the criteria for success based on the revised responses that they submitted last week. And for just a little more detail, I would ask Lisa Armstrong, who is one of our policy analysts and who took the lead on reviewing the consortium's implementation plan, to share some of our areas of strength and areas for growth and improvement. And as with the LEA plans, we do have a feedback document that the board members have. It's also posted for the public that is available to everyone. Lisa?
I'm here.
There you are. I couldn't see you.
I know. Okay, good afternoon. I had a chance to thoroughly read and review the consortium implementation plan. They presented a solid initial plan, and then their revised plan embedded all of the feedback from the AIB and includes a robust data analysis design. Currently, the consortium grantees provide services for roughly 26,000 students, covering over 70% of Maryland schools, and their overall goal is to serve 100,000 students across the state. The consortium's grantees provide a wide range of behavioral health services through prevention, screenings, counseling, addiction treatment, family support, telehealth services, support groups, and more wraparound services for pre-K through high school students and their families. And all of their behavioral health services are delivered using evidence-based approaches. So some highlights of their plan included utilizing the multi-tiered systems of supports, data analysis for the districts of their hubs, ongoing use of validated assessment tools to measure behavioral health outcomes. They have approaches for supporting positive classroom environments. They have incorporation of feedback from youth, and they also have engaged student voice, and the implementation of restorative practices aim to improve and repair relationships between students and the community. You will hear or you will read in their approval letter, but it deserves to be uplifted again for the public, is their key partnerships that they have embarked on, mainly with HBCU, Morgan State University, and the National Center for School Mental Health. Both of these partnerships will ensure cultural responsiveness and cultural adaptations are successfully integrated into the service delivery models. Finally, this plan will allow the AIB and other key benefactors to deepen our understanding of student mental health outcomes. And I thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on the coordinated consortium plan? Community schools, sports, community support?
Member Lynch?
Yes, I mean, I love the expansion of wraparound supports and services to students, and I'm really encouraged to hear the inclusion of things like data metrics, student voice, and I'm wondering if the board will have an opportunity at some point to actually see the data results of the students who have been served, some baseline and outcome data, or of whatever those behavioral metrics are that they are using to evaluate efficacy of their programs. I think it would be great to have an opportunity to share really innovative things that are working across the state, and to learn more about, sort of what are the positive outcomes that are happening.
I'm happy to jump in, and excuse me, I have a little bit of a cough. So, but they do discuss in their plans, opportunities to work with MLDSC to help understand long-term outcomes for students who have been served through these hubs and through these behavioral health support programs. So I think that is something that we can certainly share when that partnership and when those outcomes are available, but they do discuss that in their plan. That's a very good question.
Any further questions or comments? Well, thank you for the presentation. Madam Executive Director?
Yes, so I was just gonna, sorry, we're not ready for that one yet. We do need a motion for approval of the consortium's plan. I can read that if, all right, the motion is going to sound similar. After careful consideration of the recommendations of the AIB staff, and based on the board's own independent review of all documents provided by the Maryland Consortium for Coordinated Community Sports, the motion is for the board to approve the consortium's 2024 Blueprint Implementation Plan.
I so move. There's a second to the motion.
I'll second it.
The move and properly second that we approve the consortium of coordinated community supports. Ready for the question? Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion is so approved.
Wonderful, thank you. And I would just add, we are, as we plan our meetings in the new year, we were going to start to ask our various partners who are implementing pieces of the blueprint to come share updates with the board. And I think that we could ask the consortium, to Member Lynch's question, what data they do have that they might be able to share around services and at least sort of input data, if not the outcome data yet.
Okay.
We did just want to go backwards. I didn't want to skip this. We did want to highlight some success and progress in Maryland. And so Rachel Amstutz, who is a national board certified teacher, I wanted to give Rachel the opportunity to share this good news.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is a really critical time for people pursuing national boards across the country. Last Friday night, many of them stayed up until midnight to get their notification to log into the national board's website and to see the fireworks and see if they had indeed achieved. And so we wanted to take a minute to celebrate all of our educators across the state who said yes, who signed up to take on this rigorous work, and who last weekend found out that they did indeed achieve and are now among the ranks of those who are nationally board certified and or who maintained their certification. So the numbers kind of take a little bit of time to iron out. People may have found out that they're still on the journey, but there may have been a technical error. And so National Boards uses this month between now and sometime in mid-January to get their numbers finalized. But the preliminary data shows that 1,089 Maryland educators newly certified here in December, and that 181 who were previously certified and needed to renew did maintain their certification. We wanted to draw particular attention to one of our advisory committee members on Pillar 5. Javon's Liu is now officially a nationally board certified teacher. So we wanted to send out a big congratulations to him. And then really just a message to everybody who's undertaken this process. For those who saw the fireworks this weekend, we know how exciting it was and what a tough process it's been through. And we just really appreciate that work and that commitment to their professionalism on behalf of our students, and to those who are still on the journey, because it can be up to a 4-year journey. We know you're working hard, and that if you didn't make it this time, that it's a journey. It keeps going on, and we'll be looking forward to celebrating them in the coming years as well. So we're really excited to watch the numbers increase with national boards around the state, and really proud of all of our teachers who are going through this process.
What about numbers based on the preliminary analysis so far, overall?
We're working on those numbers, but these numbers on the screen, the 1,089 are new this year. Maintained this year is 181. Last year, the combined number was 999. So we did see a big increase this year, but we will be working with MSDE and national boards to get updated numbers on totals across the state and in each county soon. Okay. That'll be January when we'll have that data.
All right, thanks a lot. Good news.
Thank you. Very good news. And we'll also have data in January on the number of teachers and principals, educators who are pursuing national board. We don't have that data quite yet either, which is a leading indicator for the numbers of who will hopefully earn. Okay.
That's $1.1 million, right?
I'm sorry.
That's about $1.1 million right there.
Yes. That's one way to think of it. Yeah. 1.1 million that more money that they will be earning too.
And I would also say a small price to pay if we are able to retain those teachers and they provide really excellent instruction to, hundreds of students over the course of thousands of students in some cases over the course of their teaching lifetime.
And let me just add, hopefully many of them are already in a low performing school or will choose to teach in a low performing school. They will get additional incentive. And also, we want to make sure that our great teachers are in our schools that need the most help.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. The next item is the executive director report. And I will try to be quick about this. So we just want to give you the update. So the first item is on staffing. We are, the government relations director position has closed. We received a number of qualified applicants, and I'm very hopeful that we're going to be able to bring someone on in the new year, as early as possible in the new year. So we will keep you posted on that. And then we're also going to be posting on the website for 2 positions that we have previously recruited for and were not able to fill, related to Pillar 1 in early childhood, and then a financial data analyst. And then the next priority is going to be a fiscal administrator, which is a new position that we are going to be creating. Any questions about recruitment, or I will move on? Okay. Next item is finance update, particularly around our technical assistance grant. We just wanted to update the numbers we do for our phase 1 strategic facilitators. We provided no cost extensions through the end of this year so that those grant awards could be spent down. There are still several LEAs that have not utilized all of those monies, and so we are in the process of considering additional extension until May of 2025. That will be the last available extension to spend down those funds. For those counties that have not spent down those funds, we are not awarding new phase 2 grants for strategic facilitators until the phase 1 grants are fully spent. In terms of our phase 2 grants, I think the news here is really that for resource allocation, we did have originally 18 districts that asked to participate in that program, and 2 additional LEAs have requested to participate, and we have been able to make those awards to those 2 LEAs. So 20 of our 24 LEAs are participating in the resource allocation strategic partners. So meaning that they each have been are working with a strategic partner to help them with resource allocation, strategies to meet the minimum school funding requirements, and also strategic budgeting over multiple years. And we did hold our second convening earlier this month with the LEAs and the county officials jointly to discuss some of the challenges around blueprint implementation and resource allocation and the minimum school funding requirements, and sort of to try to facilitate the sharing of information both between the counties and their LEAs and also among LEAs and counties. So I think that was a successful convening. I think that moving forward, we're going to focus on working more individually and in groups with their cohorts, and not bringing 150 people together all at one time. Are there any questions on technical assistance?
Okay.
The next item is outreach and communications. And for that, I am going to ask Arshia.
Okay. Sorry, was just coming on camera here. Hi, everyone. Just a quick update on some ongoing projects that we've talked about in the outreach and communication space. So our first AIB updates email was sent out last Monday. As a quick reminder, these are going to be going out after all public meetings, and going to contain both an update as to what happened in the meetings, as well as things to look forward to, things on the horizon. It went out to almost 2,000 people on our mailing list, and we achieved about a 54.5% open rate, 11.2% clicks. There were a lot of links in this specific email because we were catching up from the past few meetings. But I'm also happy to say only one person unsubscribed. And we've gotten some great feedback on how this has been helpful and informative, and we welcome all that feedback as we continue to iterate this ongoing. So the second update is around our website redesign and contractor. Our new contractor started on December 2nd. So we are picking up our website redesign process. She's already been helping make some smaller edits in the short term, and then we are focusing on the longer term redesign process, still hoping for a spring timeline. And hopefully in one of the next few meetings, we'll be able to show you some of the progress that's being made. And then last update is just the last project that we've been working on, which is our implementation highlights by pillar and by LEA. This is really focusing on telling the story of Blueprint implementation, progress, innovations, and sharing what's going on in the different pillars in the different districts. So we are still working on that project and should have some more updates soon. That's it for me, unless there's any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arshia. The next slide, and some of this relates to discussions we've been having today. And so just wanted to give an update on the Blueprint interim evaluation. As you all know, the AIB is required to do this interim evaluation of Blueprint progress, and it's required to be completed by December of 2026. And then the AIB's recommendations are due in January of 2027. The RFP was issued back in October. We received the proposals by November 19th and have been reviewing them and continuing to follow up with the proposers. And at this point, the process continues. We are in the phase where we are asking, or maybe asking, some or all of the proposers to provide additional information and response to questions. And so we can't discuss publicly any more details around the proposals because it could give a proposer an unfair advantage. So we won't be discussing any more of this in public, other than to say that currently we had originally ambitiously hoped to bring an award to you all today. We are not through with the process to be able to do that, but we do anticipate being able to bring a recommendation to the board meeting at the end of January. And happy to answer questions if you have any. I also want to, it's sort of related. And so I also want to share that AIB and the MLDS Center staff have been discussing for many months the possibility of an MOU that would allow AIB staff to be able to access data in the longitudinal data system that is related to Blueprint progress, and also that the longitudinal data system will be the repository for all Blueprint data. Since the AIB has limited staff and capacity, and B is not a permanent entity, it does not make sense for the AIB to hold or be the repository for data that is going to be needed for long-term evaluation and assessment of the Blueprint and education. So we're in the process of working on an MOU. The lawyers will need to review, and then we're hopeful that we'll be able to enter into that MOU in the next month or so. And that is going to allow us to, in terms of some of the comments that were made earlier in the meeting, start to really access data and do more of the evaluation and assessment of what the impact of the Blueprint has been. And that is also, of course, the primary purpose of this interim evaluation. And the way that the RFP is structured, the whoever is doing the work is going to be reporting but monthly, but also quarterly update reports, and sharing learnings along the way, and not waiting until the very end of the evaluation period in the process to share data and information and even recommendations. So I think hopefully that's responsive to some of the other comments that were made earlier in the meeting.
Okay.
Member Lynch?
Yeah, so I just have two questions. One is that I know statutorily this interim report is required to include certain elements. I think what we are hearing in feedback from not only PZAM, but from others, and I think certainly things that have come to us in terms of consideration from the governor's office may require additional reflection and analysis. And so is there an opportunity to expand that original scope as needed to include some of these other components that are arising now, is my first question. And then my second question is that it is wonderful that we're developing an MOU with MLDS. I would imagine that a lot of the data that we are looking for is single segment data, which is not really generally an MLDS. Like MLDS looks across, different segments, high school to college, that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering if the AIB has been able to access all the data they need in these individual segments up until this point.
So I'm going to take the second question first. So two things. We have been attempting to access data, particularly with MSTE. They get a lot of data requests, also MHEC. And sort of the consensus is that to the extent that we're able to go to MLDS and access the data there and not asking the staff at MSD and MHEC and other agencies to provide data to us, that would be a useful thing for all of the entities involved. And so the MOU actually includes single sector data that is related to the blueprint. On your first question, we cannot change the scope of the RFP at this point. We can potentially do I don't want to get too technical, but there could be opportunities to add additional work over time after, in the future. But right now we can't change what we're evaluating, what the RFP includes and what we've asked them to respond to. Does that make sense? Okay. Vice Chair Kerwin? You're on mute.
Apologies. This MOU with the longitudinal data service is so important because we have been hampered by our inability to get rapid access to data. My understanding is that there's been an agreement on the MOU between you and between the staff at AIB and MLDS, and it's now in the hands of the attorneys. Is that correct?
We do have a draft MOU that we are working on together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not completely in the hands of the attorneys, but it will also include that.
I just wonder if Heidi sees any problems, and is this going to hopefully is going to be pretty routine once you've agreed on it. because it has really hampered our efforts not having access to this data.
And let me just say, I just want to be clear. I think that staff are trying to be responsive to our requests. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And and nobody has a large amount of staff doing this work. So we appreciate the efforts that are being made. I think in terms of there are also, I mean, it's always going to be this way, but once you receive data, there are questions about how it was defined and what is in it, and because it's the first time that we're receiving this data, it's going to take longer as we're doing all these things the first time. I think once we do that, then it's going to be easier.
Yeah, I mean, this will give us direct access to the data without going through.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very good. Thank you.
Member Stapleton?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, Brett, you suggested that we would have access to timely data. It won't be necessarily timely because there's a lag of usually at least a year for the data that is rolled out from MSDE and MHEC into the MLDS. So it won't be sort of up-to-date data.
That's a very good point. And in some cases, we will still be going directly to the agencies for data. So it won't eliminate that, but our hope is to, as much as possible, be able to utilize the MLDS data and the staff at MLDS to help us with that. But in addition, as I was saying about questions, we're still going to go back to the owners of the data for when we have questions about data. All right.
Any other questions on?
I don't see anyone's hands raised.
Well, I think
I was going to say that concludes, I think, the public agenda, unless there's anything else.
Rachel, I'm sorry, Executive Director Heist. Earlier when we were reviewing the plans, and over the last several sessions, we have been on a rolling basis reviewing the plans. And, we've heard conversations about potential adjustments to the blueprint coming in this legislative cycle, or some considerations. And it isn't really, any sort of like motion or anything like that. But I do want us to be thoughtful and consider the impacts of that on LEAs, as they've already spent, and agencies who have spent a lot of time crafting plans, that as we see adjustments, that we are thoughtful about how we ask them to respond to those adjustments, because these have been really big lifts. And then so to go back and make adjustments, I just want to make sure that we're always helping all of our partners do the work as opposed to do the paperwork. And I think that'll continue to be a challenge for us as things shift quickly.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, the plans that you've approved are for the next 3 years, as are the state agency plans. And so I do think we need to, think carefully and be very deliberative about, what updates to those plans we ask for. AIB and MSD staff have been discussing what progress monitoring of the implementation plans looks like during this 3-year period when they've already got their plans. And we're working on a proposal to bring back to the boards around what that might look like. That does not involve, submitting 99-page plans over the next 3 years.
It's appreciated, I'm sure.
Okay, any additional questions? If not, let's read the motion for moving to closed session.
Yes, Mr. Chair. For its last agenda item, the board expects to receive legal advice, discuss its FY26 budget request, and discuss a procurement matter where public discussion or disclosure would adversely impact the ability of the board to participate in the competitive proposal process. The motion is to close this meeting and then adjourn from the executive session.
Okay, I so move. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
It's moved in proper second and go into closed session. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none.